Hello there and welcome. I'm AE and this is the second episode of Beginner to Intermediate CoH2 tutorials. And I'm here with a very special guest, DevM. Hello, DevM.
Hello guys. Hopefully today I'm here to help you with some map control tips and whatever else I can come up with.
This guy is a very humble, modest, well-spoken guy, but just to get it out of the way for beginner players, he is truly probably in the top 5 players to ever play the game, and certainly on paper has won the most tournaments, one versus one tournaments in the game's history. So at times in this game's existence, he's been able to say he's better than everybody else. But Devem, as somebody that's watched you all these years, one thing I've remarked on and others have noticed as well is when there's vital engagements in the center of the screen, you're often still able to have micro output and control the map on the edges. Is that something
Mhm.
that you would say makes you slightly different to other players?
I think that there's definitely a lack of, you know, amount of players at the top level that maybe don't understand as well the effects of good map control on the side. Obviously, I'm not trying to flame anyone.
No, of course
Uh,
not. But there are certain strengths and weaknesses amongst
yeah,
the pack, right? Uh,
exactly. Like how I see it is that if both players are focused on the engagements, if you can, as a player, take some time out to kind of capture the map while it is happening, then even if you lose the engagement, you got something out of it. So it's not like a complete loss.
Okay, I like that. So even if you've traded down perhaps slightly in the center of the map, if
Yeah.
you've been able to cap a point elsewhere, you can. So let's talk a little bit about this map and resource systems in general, and have a little look about. This map is Crossroads. It's a tournament staple map, especially in the last 2 years, and it's been the dominant setting for many a battle. If you on this map, and let's say you were the South player, and in this today we actually have a player that's worth mentioning. He's sent in his replay for a little bit of analysis. His name's David Logan. He is a 1 versus 1 on Crossroads versus a rank 380 Brit player. I was ranked 750. I think I did decent, but there's clearly a lot of fundamentals I need to look into. Absolutely need advice on map control. So, DevM, you're this great player, but put yourself in Dave's shoes now. You're setting out on the game, you're Wehrmacht. Can you give him just any tips from the get go on what he needs to do in order to conquer Crossroads?
hmm So at the beginning of the match here, he wants probably focus on that fuel on the right, and after that he wants to move into the center. Doesn't it exactly need to be with the full amount of his forces going to the right. It can be, you can move the MG and the first grand to the center as well. Because usually what you want to do is you have kind of a mobile force going around, and if he harasses your engineer on the right, you want to have the units kind of nearby. So if they go to the center, what they're going to win is you're going to see where he's capping and where he's moving his forces by moving to the center first. And if he harasses your engineer on the right, then you move to the right. So you kind of cap the right of the map with the engineer, and you secure the center as soon as you can with the rest of your forces.
So I think it's very important to remark right now just how much the level of detail DevHem is able to give us about the very first 20 to 30 seconds of the game. So just taking the Pioneer to an edge of the map and maybe the first Grenadier and the MG to the center, in that there's a lot of thought processes involved. It's all about vision, scouting, and a top player such as DevM actually has thought processes behind their very first steps in the game. And Devon, why is the start of the game so important, and why do you put so much thought behind it?
It's important because, especially on Company of Heroes 2, you can tech up very quickly. So any advantage that you get from the early game here, it's going to snowball into, yeah, or it can snowball into really early vehicle, or it can snowball into like a really early advantage, in which your opponent will not be able to tech if you play it right. Uh, and also, if you also do it right, if you harass your opponent a lot on the right like territories and the right units, then you also get an idea, if that makes sense, on how their resources will be. It's kind of hard sometimes to get a grasp on that, but depending on how you play the map and the engagements that you choose, then you can start having an idea of the resources he has available, and then you can start actually predicting what he's going to do, if
Okay,
that makes sense.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves into
Yeah.
that section of the map here. Let's see what Simo does versus Blaze in the very first moments of the game, and
You're
see
like
how see how the first. I just feel like we've got this treasure
doing
trove of
that.
information. I plugged myself into the Matrix, and I don't feel like I now know Kung Fu. I feel like shit. There's so much information. So let's break this game down, and we'll have another pause and analysis when we get into the center of the battlefield. Let's just see
Yeah.
what Simo does in the very first moments of the game. So good start. Yeah, she's building, and as Wehrmacht, I mean, what are the strengths of Wehrmacht, and how do you play them in terms of the unit composition?
So I think that the strengths of Wehrmacht lie on their capabilities of basically, even if you fall behind, you're not really that behind because of how the faction works. Basically, you are at a ticking time clock, and once you get to that, mid game, maybe late game, you're pretty much unstoppable if you do it right.
Okay.
Also, the fact that they have access to the sniper on their tier 1 building is a really strong, underrated, well, probably not underrated at the higher level, but maybe at the intermediate level. It's a very underrated unit there, I would say. And besides that, they also have a really strong tier 2, so if you can get early advantage and get those 2-2s out, you're going to be in a very good position.
So immediately, Simo has pretty much done what you've asked him to do. It must be said the Pioneers are going right. The Grenadier and the MG are in the center in that position we were talking about earlier, giving him decent sight range. I mean, what's the strength of controlling the center?
So as you can see, he's seeing that the point is being capped there on the the manpower point. So because he has vision on all of that, he knows that he's going left. He knows that the right is capped, but if he sees that, you can see that he's probably going to see that Tommy squad soon. As soon as he does that, he knows that the right is unprotected, and if he knows that, he can cap the right.
So there you go. There's vision and reconnaissance immediately. I mean, we know it's only putting an MG in a house, but taking a position like that is such a decent one to do. And you do see it,
Yeah.
of course, in pretty much every automatch game you're doing. But if you're a true beginner and you're watching this video, it's very vital stuff to take note of.
So yeah, you can see right here that he sees the point being captured, and he knows that the Tommy squad moved from the right to the left. So he knows that the right either has like 1 unit max or it has nothing.
Interesting. Let's speed up a little tiny bit through this segment
Yeah.
and just get to the next part of the game when the first engagements start to occur. And
So here we see actually a common kind of mistake, which is if you pause right now, you see that he has like all his units separated. If his opponent was to make a push somewhere now, he would probably be, overwhelmed somewhere. And the point is that if you keep your units together and you kind of get a unit out of the map, like a Tommy squad or any unit in general, then that's going to translate into more map control, or it's going to translate into a cutoff maneuver because you're going to be outnumbering him. So you don't want to do this. You usually want to keep the units together, even if that comes at the cost of some of the points. Because if you think about this, if you kind of get a good engagement early on with all your units against the guy, after that you're going to win more map control than you would if you had your units separated and maybe picked off. So in my opinion, it's not a good style to have, to separate units early on. You want to keep them together and kind of try to get 1 unit out of the map and then capture more than you would otherwise.
I like it. Okay, fair enough. Also, it must be said, it does leave this flanking route exposed to the cutoff there.
Yeah.
Should he be able to get past the MG. Just for people that want to play Brits or choosing a faction in general, I suppose is a good point to make. Do you advise new players to pick one faction and stick with it for a while and try and master it, or?
I definitely think so. I'd probably pick, if I was to choose one, I think Austria is probably the best one to start with, because even if it's one of the most difficult to kind of get going, you get a good grasp on everything that the game has to offer.
Okay, first engagements now. We've got a Wasp up from Brits, so clearly Blaze was waiting to get the munitions to unturf the MG, having seen it. He's been Fausted, though, and the MG takes it out, so... Interesting start there. Nice Faust from behind the sight blocker, I guess. Oh, and he's gotten a sniper as well, DevM, so the unit you advised he's gotten.
Yeah, very good choice against UKF, especially.
And why is it a good choice?
Because their dummy squads have a low amount of members. And also because usually he takes a bit more time to get his own sniper, so in that time you can actually get a lot of harassment done. With the grenadiers, it's kind of mid-chilling for the sniper.
So what a perfect player to watch this as analysis. We're now gonna have a sniper battle. So DevM, a battle-scarred veteran of many, 1v1 sniper war. We're gonna see a little bit of more amateur intermediate play.
Yeah, so this is a winning engagement for us here. He has to get out of there with the sniper firing away.
And due to it being, mid-level or beginner-level players with snipers, I do predict the map control may suffer slightly in terms of not pushing the sides whilst this tense stuff is going on.
Okay,
So,
here we see the Brit sniper, yeah.
He's already unveiled himself, by the way. They both should know that they have opponent snipers on the field. And, immediately whilst... Well, he's going for the light mechanized company.
So here you see that I think he's going to move his Pioneer to the center. Definitely should be, the Pioneer should be that unit that should be either building stuff like mines, or he should be using it to harass points on the far left. Because if you think about it, the UKF doesn't have an engineer squad, so he has to move like a fighting unit there. So if you can get a fighting unit, yeah, right there to the field, you're going to win an engagement probably on the other side.
So there immediately is more positive maneuvers to be engaging in terms of map control. Oh, he's caught on it again, Universal Carrier with the Wasp. He's be a favourite of this particular Brit player. He's having to get out of there this time. And the sniper is also. So there we go. There was a good tip for Simo in terms of map control. Is, don't just send everything to the centre, especially a Pioneer.
Yeah. This Pioneer, technically you could have already have the fuel decapped on the left with this. And you can see that he's not doing much right now.
Anyway, here we go. But this is just... I suppose we can offer him general tips in terms of micro at this point and what to watch out for. Would you have dived there, DevM? Would that have been a...
I definitely would have dived there.
I would have dived every day of the week.
Because if he didn't take, damage that he did from the Vickers, he could have dived in very easily.
But I think this is a very important point to make right now. Simo, your opponent clearly hadn't had time to get Royal Engineers. Royal Engineers would have been the only thing that could have stopped the dive with either a mine or a heat grenade. And your opponent's clearly put all their munitions into, 150 munitions into Wasp flamethrowers, and they've built the 2 universal carriers. So that should have been the game right there. At 6 minutes 30 seconds, you should have won. That's
what I was talking about before. Like Austria tier 2, if you get that 2-2 out, and you really had a good position there. So if you pushed right there at that moment and you killed the Brand carrier and possibly the sniper, that was game over for the guy.
I don't think we can give you any more advice on map control when you should have won at 6 minutes into the game. But only experience can give people the balls to dive when they need to, because it's like when you're a beginner player, your mind doesn't think like, I've watched thousands of casts, you've played in hundreds of tournaments, so we've seen all these situations over and over again. These guys, he doesn't know the great unknown, and in this case, there's nothing protecting over here. There's no mines yet. There's 6 minutes in. It's just fun to watch, though, I guess, and it's just great to be in a position where you can give people like that points, I guess.
So now that he lost the center, you should probably look on to harassing that left part of the map, which is still under control from the Brit guy, and he has no unit there, or he hasn't had a unit there for a long time. So
No, and now the Vickers is pushing up, and although he can unturf it with the sniper, so he has to start being a little bit careful of the enemy sniper getting close up because he's not controlled the center for so long.
Yeah, he's going to get a mortar out, so he doesn't have to use a sniper. But actually, I think this is usually a mistake that people do with the sniper, which is getting it on hold fire and kind of waiting for the counter snipe only. In my opinion, if you keep the sniper firing away at some points, not every time, you're going to have better results, because if he's waiting for the counter snipe, you're going to have a net positive win. And there's actually a very, well-known player in the community that does that. And it's definitely one thing that I think shouldn't be done.
There we go. Pioneer's under a little bit of duress now. Looks like he knows the sniper's there, but he's a little bit trepid. It doesn't quite want to go for it.
We got the AC out, so that 2-2 needs to be careful now.
Yeah, sorry, the 2-2 has just gone into the center there. I was watching the sniper battle and taken out the opponent's UC. But again, he possibly even could have get that Grenadier in. I know it's got 2 men left. That would have been better for map control. At the moment, he's having his cutoff taken. So,
So you see that his focus was kind of wrong here. That's why he's losing so much map control now, because if the opponent has control of the center, he's probably going to have a better position to move into your cutoff. So then you can just move to the left and kind of trade map control if you don't think you are in a position to fight them.
So we're already exactly starting to see problems with map control, and I think the biggest point you've made that I would take away is that mortar build, your manpower investments are so important in Company of Heroes, and if you've only got two Grenadiers, aka capping units, and a Pioneer you're not using as a capping unit, I mean, what's the point? You're not going to have any points capped, or be able to put map pressure down.
Yeah. Definitely. He's only using the grants to cap, and he only has 2 of them. And you don't want to do that at all. So here I'd probably have gone for a 3rd Grenadier squad, and I would have avoided the center and gone to the left, so you don't need the mortar to dislodge the MG that is there, because he's going to have to move his units anyways to defend his own fuel.
Yeah, so if he's not confident to take that out with the sniper, and he definitely shouldn't have built the mortar. Instead, he could have changed his positioning on the map, as DevM says, because as we know, this map is, you can either split it that way or that way. It's crossroads. It's the most useless annotation of all time, but it's true. So if you're struggling to get this house, which is punishing your cutoff, you can always go left side and control this cutoff instead. That fuel is pretty much the same distance to that fuel. So that's just, I suppose, experience. But that's why you're watching this video, to get a little bit of boost to your experience.
Yeah, so if you guys think that you can't fight your opponent on part of the map, just switch to the other one, because he probably isn't defending it. Actually, this applies to a lot of cases, like if you are behind in the game, tech-wise, or you're being outmatched unit-wise, usually you want to kind of, go around the map and cap points, just kind of be annoying for a while, and not actually pick any engagements, because you're probably not going to win them. Okay. That's the case that should have happened here.
Yeah, being annoying is a very important part of Company Heroes' competitive play. If you can just frustrate your opponent and try and decap their fuel, even without capping it for yourself, it can help a lot.
Yeah, actually the time that the fuel is decapped is very valuable.
Ooh, he's gonna win this one. It's close. Oh.
He got
it on destroy. He got it out of control. That's some bullshit right there. Oh, we have the MG one though, and the mortar combo. Sniper's still got 4 kills. I mean, that's a 360 manpower investment. That's gotten
definitely underused here.
About 50 manpower or 60 manpower back so far. Not great. So I think the DevM, even in only 10 minutes of gameplay, we've been able to pick out enough points. So let's summarize them now. You give me the number 1 takeaway this player should have in terms of controlling the map and being incisive.
Okay, and definitely his Pioneer usage.
Pioneer usage is number one. These guys, you don't care about them. Make them cap points.
Yeah.
What about a second point, Devon?
The second point I would say is his ability like to translate winning engagements into map control after, because he did have some early engagements like that he won early, and he had a Tommy squad back to base, and he had a good position in the center for the first few minutes, and he couldn't translate that into controlling, for example, the right that wasn't protected.
He didn't capitalize on his gains and
Yeah,
use them as an anchor to push off and take the cutoff, or use it as a distraction to take the fuel. He wasn't taking advantage of the advantage he'd created himself.
exactly.
And any other like more general points that you think you can think of for this guy to take away?
Uh, General points. Again, I think that there was also a thing that kind of went unnoticed and also many players don't usually look at, which is he lost the center because he went with the Grenadier, overextended without having too much backup, and the Brit guy came out of the base with all his units and got that unit out of there, and after that he had number advantage on the center. So you kind of don't want to get yourself in a position where your units might retreat because of being picked off, and then you lose your whole position because you have one less unit. So if you're going to push, try to always have that MG at least covering, or if you're going to decap point, cap a point that's closer to your territory and not so far forward in his, because he went for that manpower point next to his base on the center VP on the right, and he could have capped the one that is the cutoff on the road.
Mm.
So if you're going to decap without being supported by the rest of your units, then pick a point that if the enemy appears, you can backpedal without too much problem.
I like that. So pick points where you've got a fallback point and you've kind of risk assess what you're doing as if you're going to be unsupported. And then obviously general points we picked up for this guy, unit composition. I mean, you need 3 backbone infantry units at all times, right? You never have
Exactly.
2. Two's crazy. And that does not translate into map control, even if you're going for this German infantry doctrine, you maybe plan to get stormtroopers or something. No, you always have 2 as a launch platform if you're playing standard competitive Company Heroes play. Sorry, 3 at least. And then
You can have 2, but it's in a very special occasion where you want that early tier 2 to get the early 222 out, so you have less manpower spent on your tier 1. But in that scenario, you actually have to make good use of the 222, which at that moment where you could have pushed, for example, the Brand and the Sniper, you had to know that you could push.
exactly. So if he's
yeah.
gone for a shock tactic that's incisive,
Yeah.
be incisive and make it work. If he's sacrificed map control and a bit of kind of backbone of his army and gaining veterancy on infantry to get the 222 out, and then he didn't push with it. He backed off.
Exactly. So I would advise maybe for him to kind of forget the tier 2 so early and go for the 3 grunts.
Yeah, agreed. So we don't want to overdo it with information. We just want to give beginner to intermediate players a useful kind of insight into how DevM would approach this and what this guy Simo could have done differently. DevM, this was highly enjoyable. I thought it was very interesting talking about this.
Yeah, I think it was a replay that actually had a lot of decent points to talk about. I think the player is probably going to take a lot from this.
And it's also important to note, although we only watch 1/3 of the replay, 10 minutes, seriously, the first 10 minutes of the game can be some of the most important by far. And if you're not doing the first 10 minutes right, the next 20 aren't going to go great because you don't have the platform to launch your battle.
I'm not too sure if you watched the rest of the replay. I just want to say this, that if the guy is watching, then also when you have 2 packs out, try to have them support each other and not separate on, different sides of the map.
Is that what he did? Did he? Yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's 2 packs pack a punch, but 1 pack is just going to keep your opponents repairing their tanks a little bit. It's never going to actually get the kill, is it?
Exactly. And you also open yourself up to vehicle rushes on 1 pack and not have the other supported as well.
Fair enough. Are there any other I think I've cut you off before we watched the full 40-minute replay.
Oh no, I think I just had like this point that I
Fair enough.
saw before. That was a big one.
Well, hopefully we can do something like this in the future, DevM. If guys in chat, if you've got any topics you would like to see covered or any ideas, or indeed if you have a replay of your own and you're around the rank of 500 to 1,000, you've played for a little while but you want to start getting better, please feel free to send a replay into redditcoh@gmail.com. Don't ask why, that's my email address, it is. And thanks a lot, DevM, and see you guys soon.
No problem. See you guys.